You and me, partners?
How do we create more opportunities for Black lawyers?
Uh-oh, this isn't good for Diane.
Do you have any questions? I'm just listening.
You cannot have a white partner head up a black firm.
Did I miss something about a partners meeting?
Good afternoon. I'm Jonathan Capehart, opinion writer for The Washington Post. Welcome to Washington Post Live. The Good Fight is known for weaving current events and thorny issues into its storylines, and the fifth season, which just finished a week ago today, is no different. Joining me right now to discuss this entertaining and thought-provoking show that you can catch on CBS and Paramount Plus are its co-creators. You see them there just below me at the bottom, Robert and Michelle King, and its stars, Tony and Emmy Award-winning actress Christine Baranski, and Tony, Emmy, and a Grammy Award-winning singer and actress Audra McDonald. Welcome to you all to Washington Post Live.
Thank you.
Michelle and Robert, let me start with you because when I woke up this morning, the news seemed tailor-made to your show. The news about the Supreme Court, look at Robert, Robert's already there. The Supreme Court letting the restrictive Texas abortion law go into effect. And I immediately thought of the Good Fight. Are you already thinking of how to work this into season 6? And how do you decide which headline or event is worthy of a storyline in the show?
I'll answer for myself. I mean, I was thinking about it in bed this morning too, and the answer was yes, I'm thinking about how to do it, but I don't know how to do it in a way that doesn't seem so obviously evil. That usually we prefer storylines with some gray in it, and I'll be damned if I can find the gray here. But Robert, perhaps you can.
We're at night we hear our cell phones ding, and then we reach for it and go, oh shit, oh shit. So there's always something that is like, oh, that's a point. I think it's the bounty. The law as bounty hunters is crazy, and a little bit like what we did with this, court that is out on its own, creating its own law. There's this difficulty of this balkanization of the law in America that is scary, even irrespective of abortion. I don't quite know how the Supreme Court lets this ride because it just, I'm sorry, that's too much politics and not enough entertainment. So,
well, you know what? Well, let me ask you this then. Because Michelle, you just said, there's not enough gray in the Texas story. I'm wondering, were there headlines or storylines in the past that were big conversation in the nation, but you passed on weaving them into the show because there wasn't enough gray?
The one area that we find very difficult to find gray is immigration. We've done a few immigration stories, but they risk becoming earnest very quickly.
The real thing we're against is preaching to the choir, and there's a real tendency in shows or in subjects that you can't find both sides of, because what's great in the show is that people usually are arguing both sides of an issue.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to get to, and that's especially so when you get to issues of race and gender and class in the show. But Christine, I want to come to you, still sticking to the Supreme Court, because in season 5, you literally have fireside chats with RBG, with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. How do you think a conversation with her would go today, given the news from the Supreme Court?
Well, I read Justice Sotomayor's dissent at about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I think Ruth Bader Ginsburg would pretty much articulate that. She would be appalled. but yes, we have Elaine May playing Ruth Bader Ginsburg, so it's a double treat to have that intellect in play as a character and as an actress. So I hope we get to it next season. But the news is just traveling so fast now that today's story, it could be so much worse, or it could change, in another few months. So, the Kings are brilliant at not only keeping a pace, but almost looking to the future where these arguments are going.
Sorry, Christine, finish your thought.
No, I'm finished.
Oh, okay. So since I brought up the fireside chats between you and RBG, let's show one of those fireside chats. Let's have a watch.
That's you telling me what I want to hear.
You want to know what I really think?
I do. Tell me.
All my life, I was told to step aside. I was in law school, I had a baby, and I was told I should step aside so that a man could take my position. I was told to step aside when Jimmy Carter appointed me to the Court of Appeals, and the same with the Supreme Court. Here's the thing. Don't step aside because someone wants you to. Don't step aside for politics. Men are always asking women to step aside so a man can go first.
But even though I'm being asked to step aside so that a black person can take my place?
Can you still do something for women?
Yes.
Then do it.
And so that scene is about your character, Christine, asking RBG what she should do because the law firm is talking about removing you as partner because you're white. It is a black law firm, and this is part of it gets to the heart of some of the central themes of the show: race and white privilege. I would love to know from your vantage point how that storyline hits you.
Well, to play the character, I had to live that thought process and that emotional process. And Diane, being always the good fighter, that is her character. She strives to take moral high ground, I think. She clearly knows she's on the wrong side of history here. But her fight was always from a place of being the underdog as a woman. So she really wants to hold on to her job based on the fact that she has fought the good fight her whole life. I mean, women have been an underclass since, the time they exited the cave. So she feels that she fought for decades against ageism and against her gender discrimination. And she achieved what she achieved by virtue of fighting and her hard work and her achievements. And I had to firmly wrap my mind around that was where she was coming from, because it's very interesting to have a leading lady who at this moment in time just seems to be on the wrong side of the argument.
And
a lot of searching, and I did have a lot of emails exchanged between Robert and Michelle and myself saying, help me out here, help me over the cliff here. You understand? Clearly, I need to justify this. I need to act this material. And then, of course, I have my brilliant acting partner, Audra, to talk to and to figure out how to do those scenes where we don't fall into cliches and show that level of respect and trying to work through what is a very difficult dilemma for Diane and for Liz.
Mm-hmm. And so, Audra, pick up that thread. How are those conversations with Christine with her character?
Well, the conversations are multi-layered, because on the one hand, we understand that as actresses, these are roles that we have to portray, and these are roles that we have to, imbue with a sense of truth and understand the motivation behind what they're doing. And because Christine and I are friends, there's it was very difficult, I think, to do the one big fight we have where they, are throwing F-bombs at each other and one is trying to say, you don't get to do this. You don't get to be the head of a Black firm. As a white woman, you don't get that, because Christine and I kind of know and understand each other's politics, and I think we're very much on the same page with a lot of it. But it was painful. So the personal part is it's painful to do that, even though it's what we're paid to do as actresses. We're paid to do that and go on these journeys. But from a character standpoint, I think what Robert and Michelle have done with these two characters is, again, have gone to the gray. Liz understands Diane's fight, and she understands where Diane's coming from as a woman in this field, as a woman in working in these powerful circles and trying to stay in these powerful circles and trying to advance their cause. Liz understands that. But Liz is also a Black woman, so she also understands that struggle and understands that in the hierarchy, even though women are at the bottom, Black women are at the very bottom. And so so there's gray, because Liz is also trying to protect Diane at the same time. She's trying to carve out a space for her, but at the same time understanding that there's a reckoning that's happening, and she needs to defend, understand that, and help clear the space for Black people as well. So it's a lot of messy gray. And what I loved about what Robert and Michelle did in the middle of that tense fight, flip it on its head and bring real life into it, or crazy life into it, because that's the world we're living in right now, and have this sort of misunderstanding where all of a sudden the world thinks that they're lovers. And so the spat is about Diane and Liz being lovers. So, I mean, not that I wouldn't be Christine Baranski's lover. I mean, that's great. But just that it then turns into that, it's a wild, really, twist. But it helped sort of take some of the tension out at the same time, which was, I think, a wonderful way to play it.
And tremendous humor. My God, as tough as those scenes were, Audra, where we were confronting each other, I mean, it was just delicious to be with Dennis O'Hare, and he's getting as, closet lesbians. I mean, it was just, it was such a relief. It was like having a lemon sorbet after scarfing down, steak tartare.
Wow. Even your body language changes, the way you lean towards each other and say, I don't think we want to share this, darling. It was very funny stuff.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Christine, go ahead.
What I think Audra and I had discussions, and I think what's great is you see two women who really deeply respect each other, regardless of their race, their gender. They are two professionals, intelligent people who have enormous respect for each other's work and journey in life, and that somehow that was preserved all the way till the end of the episode 10 when Diane does say, okay, and the two women end as friends. And I think that's the biggest, most wonderful arc, that they maintain the integrity of their friendship.
So,
and at the same time grow, and they grow. They both grow. Diane takes a huge step forward. I mean, that's a huge step. That's a huge understanding, and that there's growth and understanding as well.
Michelle or Robert, were you jumping in?
Yeah, I was going to say, I do not think a story arc could have worked earlier than the 5th season of the show either. You needed all those episodes for the audience to know and trust and like these characters, to really be able to see the gray in that argument. Because otherwise, I don't think it would work at all.
That's actually, that's a very good point, Michelle, and is a good segue to this clip that I want to show. I showed the clip of of Diane with RBG. Now, and where gender and race comes up, that Diane is working through. But Liz is working, she's trying to reconcile being a partner in a Black law firm while having a white named partner whose husband is being investigated by the feds for being a part of the January 6th insurrection. And I want to show this clip of Liz and Diane talking about this.
He's being harassed because he's defending your husband.
Well, that's unfortunate. We've represented people far worse than Kurt, who, by the way, was found innocent.
I'm not saying that he wasn't, but January 6th? I mean, we watched the Confederate flag make its way to the Capitol building. You know, it's people that Kurt didn't want to turn over to the FBI. Those people, they don't even want us alive.
Well, not all of them. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. I'm certainly not defending those people. They're all despicable traitors.
And now that's what people are saying about Julius.
And me?
And so what I love about that scene, and it gets to what you were saying a moment ago, Michelle, about how this story arc couldn't happen before season 5. In watching that, it didn't come off as, oh, they're throwing in this incredible headline from real life to make it part of the storyline, and therefore I'm watching these two people discuss it. It really did feel like I knew these two people. I knew where they were coming from, and they're having this really difficult conversation. But I think, Christine, you were saying it before, but having this conversation tough, but respectfully. And so I'm just wondering, maybe expand on this even more, Audra. Is it really the fact that you and Christine are friends? You know each other so well that you're able to play these scenes? Do you think that if you didn't know Christine as well as you do, that you would be able to give that much gray in such an incredible performance?
I don't know the answer to that. I would imagine that when actors work together, there has to be a deep level of trust, because there's a lot of, really vulnerable places that you have to go to. So I know that, with the one, not the scene you showed, but the big fight that they have, because this conversation between Diane and Liz happens throughout the entire season. So it's a conversation that is taking months within the season to happen. And so it's almost like a couple, working in therapy or something. So when it boiled over in that one episode, if I hadn't known Christine as well as I did, because I remember feeling after we did that scene that night, Christine, and tell me if you felt the same way, we needed a moment to say, okay, we're okay.
Yeah,
we're on the same side here, because my ire, all my everything in my solar plexus about how I feel about these issues was just right at the surface, and I had to take a moment to let all that go, because I know that, because I know Christine and I love Christine, and I had to put it in a different place because it was coming up, because again, Robert and Michelle are writing at a time when all this is happening. It's all real. So these conversations are being had, and the passion is, at its, it's at its height. So without having that relationship and that trust and that understanding of who we are as people, as Christine and Audra, I think it would have been even more difficult to do that scene.
You remember, Audra, though, that the director wanted us to be very close together, like across the table, almost like a visual, like black, white, confronting each other. And you and I both said, no, sorry, we're falling into a trope there. And We don't want to start that way. And we started in as reasonable, calm place as possible. And then it built on its own. We didn't presuppose a conflict. We were trying to, you can see Diane calibrating the argument. She so doesn't want to, she knows she's walking on a very thin surface. And she, I think the brilliance of a lot of these scenes is it shows how difficult it is to talk about these issues, but these characters actually perforce have to talk about them. And how do we talk about them? How do we honestly get to a place of communication? And I think, the Liz Diane thing this season was really just went in there and tried to, show the discomfort, the vulnerability, the respect, the passion, as Audra said, that flaming anger that justifiable anger and equal discomfort. So yeah, I was very proud that we dared to go there.
I like to say about the Kings is they go right up to the third rail and they stomp on it. They stomp on the third rail. And then they walk over it, and then they walk behind it, and then they stomp on it again. And then the sparks fly. And that's what makes it exciting, what they do. They're not afraid of that third rail. They go right to it.
They just leave it to the actors to execute it, though.
Yeah, right.
Very quick. We go home. Oh, I'm sure they're doing well. I'm sure it's...
But I mean, Audra, to your point, they stomp on the third rail, but then they make us as the viewers watch it, and that's what I think is the most amazing part here. All right, we've got some audience questions, and Robert and Michelle, this one is from Lee from Colorado, and it has to do with coronavirus, which is sort of omnipresent in the episode. But Lee asked this: how did you come up with the idea to have Frederick Douglass, Malcolm X, Jesus, and Karl Marx all debating such important issues inside Jay's head? As a long hauler myself, I found it both brilliant and fascinating. And I have to tell you, when those four, one by one showed up in the scene, I was just like, wait, hold up, wait a minute. He's talking to Frederick Douglass? Is this an old Soul Train commercial? What's happening? And then when the other three came in, I thought, okay, this is inspired. Where did that come from?
It started with the idea of Nyambi, who's this great actor who I don't think we use deeply enough, having visions because he's a long hauler. And we have a writer in our writers' room, Oren Squire, who mentioned the Soul Train commercial, which we weren't familiar with, and he played it, and it started in ridiculousness. The idea of grabbing something from an old Soul Train commercial, which might be the last thing traveling through your brain as you die, and then grabbing Frederick Douglass from that, and then what seemed obvious is dealing with the issues of today, but in the voices that come from Nyambi's youth. One is his mom's influence with Jesus, college course bringing in Karl Marx.
And I think you brought in the rest. I think.
Yeah,
we
played off reality of this commercial, but then thought, let's bring in all these others because, obviously earnestness, COVID is obviously an earnest topic, but how do you make it something that at least you defang it slightly and take some comedy into it? It's kind of like the way Audra and Christine are become lesbian at the end of that episode. You just start in something serious, but then move to something that's slightly ridiculous.
Okay, so on that point, how do you know where the line is? How do you know that, this is crossing over into something that's going to get us in trouble, that's not funny, that is insensitive? But in all these scenes we're talking about, they are extremely funny.
I think we go there, and then in the editing room, if it's offensive, we cut it. The editing room gives you this last exit ramp from something that we don't think is working. But I think our comedy bone, look at Network or Hospital. You can't think of any shows or any movies that go further than Patty Chayefsky did in those. So I think there's a lot of room. And the world is more ridiculous now. The world you have to paint with very bright colors to satirize what is an unsatirizable world.
We have a question for Audra, still on the hallucination, and this comes from David from Connecticut. Audra, David wants to know, if Liz could have hallucinated any historical figure this year, who would you choose, and who would you cast to play them?
If Liz could have hallucinated, ooh, historical figure. Oh, that's such a good question. Oh my gosh, I don't even know. I mean, where to begin? Ida B. Wells. I mean, she's still with us, but well, or I mean, Michelle Obama's still with us. I mean, maybe we can get her to
You could
guest
still
on the show.
hallucinate her.
I know I could hallucinate her. Yeah, that's a good question. Fannie Lou Hamer. I'm trying to think of very powerful women who were who talk about going up to the third rail, and for very good reasons. So yeah, Fannie. And who would play her? Oh my gosh, yeah, Whoopi or Viola or I don't know, Ruby Dee. Get Ruby Dee to come back from beyond and play one of these characters. Yeah,
that would be a hallucination.
Yeah.
right there. Christine,
Yeah.
this is a question. It's for, it was addressed to Audra, and I'm giving it to you because it involves you. This is a question from Laura from California. And apparently, Audra once said she wanted to do a musical episode. Is there still a chance of that happening? At least give us an Audra-Christine duet. What do you think about that?
It would be such an honor for me to sing with Audra. We did Raspberry Beret, and that to me was a career highlight. And that we were just practically riffing that. But yeah, we can dream. Maybe in the final, the series finale, when we all decide to pack it up, we'll just blow it out. And we have just innumerable great musical Tony-winning performers in the courtroom and as judges. And I mean, it's a revolving door on great talent. But yeah, I mean, Audra and I singing a little priest or something in the courtroom. I don't know. You got to do something.
Would be so much fun. But again, Jonathan, our bosses are right there. So you got to talk to them. We've been pushing. So.
Okay, Robert and Michelle, what's the holdup? Why not? It could be a dream. It could be a dream sequence.
The holdup is right here. I would have done it the first step. In the pilot, it would have happened.
Oh.
But in defense of Robert, there is a problem with this, which is, how do you have Diane and Liz singing as well as Christine and Audra and not making their careers as that? I mean, it's a problem dramatically, actually.
Wait a minute. I'm not in TV. I'm not a TV writer. But Robert, if it's a dream sequence, they could do anything.
I think our problem is so many shows do it that it feels a little bit, I don't want to say cheap because a lot of shows we respect do it, but I'll say cheap. It feels like a lot of people who grew up with musicals and the show is not, but you know what? I mean, we're going to give in probably at some point because I always do. So.
One final question. What do you hope? And all of you go down the line. I'll start with you, Christine, because you're here over here, this corner. In season 6, is there a particular issue or topic you hope to jump into in season 6?
Well, that's a biggie, but I don't know. I'm sure everyone's feeling existential threat at this point. What is going on with our climate? I don't know how you make a series about climate change or impending doom without losing your audience. But I think by the time we go back to shooting, we're going to be addressing some we'll either find humor or we'll go dig very deep. And I mean, one of the reasons I have loved doing this character in this show for all these years is because you get to bring your present self, your self-awareness and your sense of care about the world into the workplace. And to stay on top of current events means you bring it into your character and into your work. I think, I hope things get better. I just want more conversations with Ruth Bader Ginsburg who'll keep me sane, and Elaine May.
I think, Christy, that's guaranteed to happen. Real quickly, Audra.
You know, I think I would love to see them. I know COVID is a lot, but it's still continuing to be with us. But I would love to see something that addresses just the emotional trauma and the constant state of anxiety that we are all in, and how it affects us on the most sort of mundane levels, like them walking into the courtroom and not even remembering what they were doing. I find just the trauma from what's been happening and how it is affecting me in my everyday life with things. It would be an interesting thing to sort of discover, because we're all going through it. And the more people I talk to about it, the more people are. So I would just like to see how that sort of infects their everyday lives.
And so, Robert and Michelle, you've gotten your assignments. So season 6, what are we going to see?
We're going to see exactly what they just told us to write. But that's
And the only thing I'd add is the bounties on perceived crimes, because I do think that is a way to get around. Anyway, you understand what I'm saying. The bounties on perceived crimes, not even just as abortion, but on other issues, I think is a concerning issue.
And with that, not only are we out of time, we are over time. Robert and Michelle King, Christine Baranski, Audra McDonald, thank you so much for coming to Washington Post Live.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thank you.
And as
Bye-bye.
always, thank you for tuning in. Remember, you can watch all 5 seasons of The Good Fight on Paramount Plus, and season 6 will be on CBS later in the year, or next year, I think, at some point. In the meantime, check out our upcoming interviews by going to WashingtonPostLive.com to register and find more information. I'm Jonathan Capehart. Thank you so much for watching Washington Post Live.